And how I'm going to begin today's talk is because I'm brandy new to this conference, I was going to talk a little bit about how I actually got into the whole topic of UFOs, how I started researching it, and it has to do with the wonderful area of the Hudson Valley. So I thought I'd tie all that together, and then we'll move on to the body of the talk, which is evidence for reverse engineering programs of recovered UFOs. So here we go. So during this whole hour-long presentation, we'll go over in detail the information contained in the Eric W. Davis, PhD, and Admiral Thomas Wilson meeting notes that discuss an alleged government-funded secret program dealing with the reverse engineering of recovered UFOs being run by a top aerospace technology corporation without government oversight. Plus, we're going to add supporting evidence from recent New York Times articles. Okay, so now I'll just give you a little background about myself since I'm new, and then we'll move on to that. So my wonderful husband, Wes, and I, we had graduated for a couple of years. We'd been graduated from a doctoral program that we both went to out in Illinois. And we were sitting in our living rooms and we were watching the Summer Olympics of 2000. And they were in Sydney, Australia. Now, I'm very intuitive, actually, and I pay attention to when I get little dings, like they say, pay attention. And during this program that was interestingly called The Awakening, they had different segments in the opening ceremony and they were called different things. And this particular segment was called The Awakening. And out of the floor came this art installation with this guy. And I saw this image and I said, oh my goodness, who's that? That's important. This really is something about the awakening. What's going on here? And it really caught my attention. And so if you can see, I have a little cursor here. If you can see, these are people. So you can see, and this is the stadium here. You can see that this thing was huge. It took up the whole middle of the grounds of this stadium. So I started looking into this. What was this creature? What was this art? And this depicted what was called the Wandjina. And according to, remember these guys are in Australia right now. So according to Aboriginal belief, the Wandjina are considered to be the creator gods and spirit ancestors. They are considered sky beings or spirits from the clouds who came down from the Milky Way during the dream time and created the earth and all of its inhabitants. There are cave paintings that have been found in the Kimberley district of Western Australia, and the estimates date the artwork going back approximately 4,000 to 30,000 years ago. So right away, I knew this was an important image and that people going back thousands and thousands of years have somehow interacted with something that put this image forefront in their consciousness. Did they meet beings that looked like this? I don't know, but this was an important image for thousands and thousands of years. And so then, a little bit after that opening ceremony, I started to feel like we needed to move again. My husband and I move around a lot. Like I said, we were living in Illinois. And I said to him, I really want to move to New York State. I'd never lived there before. I'm a Jersey girl. But I had been up to an area that I found so beautiful. It was an area in the Shawangunks, or pronounced different ways. That's how I do it, the Gunks. And I told him, I really want to go there. I just love this area. It's really, I was called to go back. And I was teaching part-time, so I taught part-time at SUNY New Paltz. There's a nice little town in that area called New Paltz, and I just loved it. And so sure enough, we moved back in October of that same year to the Hudson Valley of New York State. I had no idea that it was a UFO hotspot. I was not into UFOs. I have a lot of interests, but that was not one of them. So we went into this wonderful little bookstores, college town, and we're roaming around the stacks of books. And there is this book by Ellen Crystal called Silent Invasion. And it's on a shelf. And above this shelf is a little note card. And on the note card is printed in handwriting, "Do you know who your neighbors are?" And I saw this book and I saw that image and I was like, oh my gosh, I know that guy. And immediately I thought, I'm supposed to look into this. This is really important. I don't know why. We bought the book. And it turns out, if any of you, if you've lived in the area, you've probably heard of Ellen Crystal. And she wrote this book about her own experiences with beings that look like this and craft, not just craft in the sky, but craft real close up. And this really got my husband and I's interest. And she even gave some addresses of where you could go, where she was when she had some of these experiences. And so we went there and we explored the different streets in a town around called Pine Bush. Now, since then, this was quite a few years later, some of those streets that were fields were grown up and they were housing developments, but still we had some kind of interesting experiences, nothing major, but something that said, keep going, keep exploring. And we did. And then we met this wonderful couple, and they run in Pine Bush what's called the UFOs Support Group. It's still going on. It's a wonderful group. It was formed in 1993 by local residents who were having a lot of experiences and they wanted to share it with each other. And so it's still going on now. It meets monthly. And people come from all over. It provides a safe and friendly environment where people can come and share their stories and experiences as it relates to UFOs, aliens, or other paranormal activities. Well, my husband and I started to go every month. I also have a master's in counseling, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm very intuitive. So I was listening to all these people come month after month and tell their story. And I could really feel that they had true, real experiences. They had gone through things that they needed to share without ridicule, without people rolling their eyes at them. And this was a wonderful group to share it with. People asked interesting questions and brought up different things about their experiences. Maybe they didn't even, process themselves. It was really healing. And it was wonderful for me because month after month, knowing that these people were going through something. Now, we don't know exactly why and how it all works, but I knew for sure that the phenomena was real. Something is going on. There was no doubt in my mind after years of attending this group. My husband and I also researched it by going to conferences, reading a zillion more books, and doing other research as well. But this really began my interest in the UFO phenomena. It was so important to me. And then we moved again. We moved out of New York State. We actually moved to Ohio. We raised some sheep and some chickens. We moved back to Pennsylvania, and that's where we're living now. We're looking into moving again. But anyway, I went into a lot of other of my interests. I teach on many different subjects, but while we were here in Pennsylvania, December 16th, 2017, something else happened that said, ding, 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 pay attention. And because of this, I got back into looking into what is going on now within the topic of UFOs. So on December 16th, 2017, the New York Times, Politico, and the Washington Post, all on the same day, sort of coordinated, published news stories about the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which studied unidentified aerial phenomena known as UAPs, which is what the government is now calling UFOs. These UAPs were seen by pilots and other military personnel and appeared vastly more advanced than any technology currently known to man. The UAPs maneuvered so unusually and so fast that they defied the currently understood laws of physics. And I say that as currently understood. That's important. Just because they defied the known laws of physics just doesn't mean they're not real. It means we have a lot to learn, okay? So Luis Elizondo led the Pentagon's secret advanced aerospace threat identification program up until October of 2017, when he resigned his position to protest what he characterized as excessive secrecy and internal opposition to the program. He is now a part of the team at To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. They're doing a lot to get this information out to the public. They're really great. In an interview on CNN's Erin Burnett Out Front, Luis Elizondo said, quote, "My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone." Well, again, this piqued my interest. It got me back into looking into what's currently going on. And that brings us to the main topic for today, the Eric W. Davis, PhD, and Admiral Thomas Wilson meeting notes. I'm going to explain all of this to you, and we'll take it step by step. I'll help you understand who these people are, why they're important, and as much as I can to let you understand why these notes are really important. So let's first talk about the two main people that I'm going to be talking about, Eric Davis and Admiral Wilson, okay? So there's a picture of Eric W. Davis, PhD. He currently works for the Aerospace Corporation, which is a defense contractor. During 1996 to 2002, he was an aerospace astrophysics researcher at the National Institute for Discovery Science in Las Vegas, Nevada, NIDS. His research specializations include traversable wormholes and warp drive spacetimes for faster than light propulsion and breakthrough propulsion physics for interstellar flight. If anybody was interested in the dynamics of UFO propulsion, it would be somebody like this. And then there's Admiral Wilson. From 1997 to 1999, Vice Admiral Thomas Ray Wilson served as the Vice Director of Intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and held this position when the events in the Eric W. Davis, PhD, and Admiral Thomas Wilson meeting notes took place. Admiral Wilson was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency from 1999 until 2002. In 2002, after he retired, is when Admiral Wilson met with Eric Davis. So they met, these two gentlemen met in 2002. Then Eric Davis wrote up his notes about their meeting. And so here is a summary of what happened and what was in the notes. On April 19th, 2019, a 15-page document containing these notes, allegedly written by astrophysicist Eric W. Davis, PhD, concerning the 2002 meeting he had with the retired director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Vice Admiral Thomas R. Wilson, was uploaded onto the internet. The main topic of discussion during the 2002 meeting was a government-funded secret program that dealt with the reverse engineering of recovered UFOs. The program was run and controlled by a top private aerospace technology corporation. Admiral Wilson informed Eric Davis that after months of searching in 1997, he located the existence of this program that was running without government oversight. He arranged a meeting with the 3 corporate overseers of the program and was denied access to the program, even though he believed he had regulatory and statutory authority as Vice Director of Intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, I know that's a lot, and we're going to break this down. Now, the background to this is that in April of 1997, a person that's very famous in the UFO world, Stephen Greer, MD, and Commander Willard Miller, who was the military advisor to Stephen Greer, and very famous Edgar Mitchell, PhD, who's the former Apollo 14 astronaut and the founder of the Institute of Noetic Science and an advisor to the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, and some other people, went to the Pentagon for a briefing with Admiral Thomas Wilson. During the meeting, Stephen Greer informed Admiral Wilson that the U.S. government had recovered crashed alien vehicles and that unacknowledged special access programs were working on reverse engineering those vehicles. So here's a timeline, because I know this can get a little confusing if this is the first time you're learning about this. So let's start here. In 1997, this is when Stephen Greer and his advisor, Commander Willard Miller, who, by the way, knew Admiral Wilson, and Edgar Mitchell, they meet with Admiral Wilson. They tell Admiral Wilson that these programs exist. Then Admiral Wilson searches for and locates, and then is denied access to these special, unacknowledged special access programs. I'm going to go into that in a little more detail. So that's when that meeting happens, okay? Then 2002. 2002, Admiral Wilson retires from his position and he meets with Eric Davis. They discuss Admiral Wilson's 1997 meeting with the 3 corporate overseers of the reverse engineering program, okay? Then Eric Davis writes notes about this meeting, okay? But they only get onto the internet in 2019, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment too, okay? So you've got the original meeting, the Admiral looks for and finds the programs, and he's denied access when he talks to the overseers. He then retires as the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he meets with Eric Davis. Eric Davis writes up what he tells him, and then these notes are placed on the internet in 2019. Okay, so now let's look at the information from the actual notes. So after the 1997 meeting with Stephen Greer and Commander Willard Miller and Edgar Mitchell and others, Admiral Wilson began to search for the hidden reverse engineering programs that he was just told existed. He received suggestions on where to look from General M. Ward, who we think is likely to be General H. Marshall Ward, who was soon to become, in 1998, the Director of Special Programs for the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Technology, and the former, and he recently left his position at that time in 1997, Secretary of Defense William Perry. These are important people. They are holding important positions, okay? So he's talking to them. After about 45 days, Admiral Wilson successfully tracks down some of these special access programs in the files of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Technology. Okay, so we think this guy was the director of that program. Okay, so this is his group here. According to Admiral Wilson, these programs were a part of unacknowledged carve-outs, waived special access programs. So they weren't just special access programs. They were even more hidden. They were unacknowledged special access programs, hidden, hidden, hidden. And they were buried or covered by conventional special access programs. So, but Admiral Wilson found some. And so he called the program managers. 3 of the programs said they weren't what he was looking for. 4 programs referred him to one particular unacknowledged special access program. So Admiral Wilson then called that one particular unacknowledged special access program. He told them he wanted to know about their crashed UFO program and what their role in it was and what they had. They were surprised and very agitated by his inquiry. He set up an in-person meeting with the program director, the corporate attorney, and the security director, and he flew out to meet with them in mid-June. During the meeting, They told Admiral Wilson that they were nearly outed years before because an audit investigation had led to them. They gave the auditor a full tour and then struck a deal with the Pentagon Special Access Program Oversight Committee to prevent it from happening again. That's why they couldn't believe that somebody was actually talking to them. They wanted to prevent this. They didn't want anybody to find them. So now Admiral Wilson's talking to them and he says, well, I demand a formal briefing and a tour of this facility, because he was the vice director of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he had oversight as in that position of that program. But he was told he did not have the need to know, and his access was denied. He was not on what they called the bigot list. He was livid. He argued with them to no avail. Admiral Wilson was then able to see the bigot list, and it contained mostly civilians and no politicians. And this is a screenshot from the actual notes. These are the actual notes that were up on the internet. This is a screenshot. So I'm going to read this to you now. I put this TW here. This means Thomas Wilson. So this is the Admiral talking right now. So Wilson says, the program manager said they were not any weapons program. They were not any intelligence program. They were not any special ops or logistics program. They didn't fit any of those categories. Then Thomas Wilson says, I asked what they were then. There was a loud groan from the program manager. The security director and the attorney said, it's okay to say it. Eric Davis, this is Eric Davis. Now remember, Eric Davis is writing the notes. He's talking to Thomas Wilson. So Eric Davis says, say what? And Admiral Wilson says, they were a reverse engineering program, something recovered years ago in the past. Technological hardware was recovered. So I, Admiral Wilson, thought they meant recovered Soviet, Chinese, etc. hardware and reverse engineering it like a missile or an Intel platform or aircraft. Actually came to the meeting expecting to find a sensitive foreign collection and reverse engineering operation. Thought UFOs was being used as a cover for that. So I said that, and they said they weren't that either. They had, now this is the program manager talking, a craft, an intact craft they believed could fly through space, air, water dimension, unclear. Was it from overseas? Said no, could not be, not possible. Why, I asked, where did it come from? The program manager said they didn't know where it was from, but they had some ideas on this. It was technology that was not of this earth, not made by man, not by human hands. Now, I underlined this in red. This is going to be an important phraseology that we're going to see repeat itself in some New York Times articles we're going to talk about a little later. So again, this is back to the program manager. They said they were trying to understand and exploit the technology. Their program was going on for years and years with very slow progress, agonizingly slow, with little or no success. Painful lack of collaboration to get help from the outside community of experts and facilities to assist effort. They must remain isolated and use their own facilities and cleared personnel. It was a tough environment to work in. About 400 to 800 people were on the bigot list, and these people varied in number with funding or personnel changes. So then Admiral Wilson threatened to file a complaint, but they wouldn't budge, and they continued to deny him access. So that meeting ended. Back in Washington, Admiral Wilson called a meeting with the Senior Review Group, which is a subgroup of the Special Access Program Oversight Committee. But he was told that the Special Access Program Oversight Committee was siding with the program contractor, and Admiral Wilson should, quote, immediately drop the matter and let it go. Forget about it, as it wasn't within his oversight. Despite him being angry and yelling, he was told if he didn't drop it, he wouldn't see his promotion to director of DIA, which in fact he did become the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He'd get an early retirement and he'd lose 1 or 2 stars along the way. After recounting his experiences in 1997 to Eric Davis, Admiral Wilson told him, and again, this is a screenshot of the actual notes that I have here. So Admiral Wilson saying to Eric Davis now, Eric Davis, if you blow my trust, I'll deny meeting you, I'll deny everything said. I won't meet with any more people without clearances to talk about this topic. It's too risky because of security violation just by mentioning it. This is very tightly held information. It's absurdly close held subject matter. I've never seen anything like this program in the Blacks program community. So that is the information that's in the notes. Now, very important. The idea is that this gentleman, Admiral Wilson, found that in fact there are reverse engineering programs of recovered UFOs that do not have government oversight. He couldn't get at it, and he had a really high position. Okay, so how do we know these notes are genuine? How can we trust anything in them? Well, I'm going to share some evidence that are kind of compelling, at least I think so, to say that these are legitimate. And for the most part, we can trust what's in them. Now, was Admiral Wilson told the truth by the program managers and stuff? I don't know. That one I can't get back to. But that Eric Davis met with Admiral Wilson, yes. That Eric Davis wrote the notes to the best of his ability, probably yes. Okay, so there's fuzzy things in here, but let's go to some other evidence that supports the idea that what's in here is true, that the notes are real. So there's something when you look at evidence that's called the chain of custody, or another term for it is provenance. So a chain of custody in legal context is the chronological documentation or paper trail that records the sequence of custody, transfer from person to person, and control of physical or electronic evidence. The best case scenario is that people who had charge of the evidence at all times are known. This helps to prove the integrity of a piece of evidence. And provenance is a similar term. It refers to knowing the chronology of the ownership, custody, or location of a historical object or document, which is an important factor in determining authenticity. So here's the main story. Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, died in February of 2016. At some point after that, a family friend came to Edgar Mitchell's residence, and Edgar Mitchell's family did not know what to do with a whole bunch of his papers. They weren't really into the whole UFO thing. You know, Edgar Mitchell was a NASA astronaut. That's what they were proud of. This other stuff they weren't much into. So this family friend took a bunch of documents, but he wasn't into the whole UFO thing either. But he had a friend who he thought was. That friend was James Rigney. James Rigney lived in Australia. So the friend contacts James Rigney and says, I've got these documents. They are mentioning some types of UFO people and stuff. I don't know what it is. Would you like to take a look at it, out of it? And James Rigney says, yeah, I'll look at it. So he comes to the United States and he recognizes that some of these things seem kind of important. So he makes some copies and he takes them back with him to Australia. But he doesn't know the names of all these people. He doesn't know who they are. So he spends a whole bunch of time looking at them, doing research, looking at them. Okay. Then in 2018, he goes to a conference in America. Grant Cameron is a researcher. He's one of the best. If you don't know Grant Cameron and you want to get up to date on what's going on currently, look at Grant Cameron. He's great, okay? So James Rigney knows that Grant Cameron knows what's going on. So they're at this conference together, and James Rigney tries to make an appointment with Grant to show him copies, well, not copies, he had it like on some kind of tablet, electronic tablet or something, to show him what he had. So he couldn't find him, and then it's the end of the conference, and there James Rigby is walking through the hallway, and there's Grant Cameron standing there with his bags about to leave. James Rigby goes, I had these notes. I want to show them to you. I think they're really important. And Grant's like, yeah. Some other time, send them to me, whatever. And James is like, no, they're really important. I think they're really important. And they went back and forth. Finally, Grant takes a look at them. And Grant, knowing different people's names that maybe other people don't know, recognizes the importance of these notes. And so Grant Cameron takes them. He has them, and then he doesn't know exactly what to do with them because he knows a bunch of the people involved. He probably knows everybody involved, okay? And so he doesn't know what to do with them. So finally, he meets somebody that says, I can get them on the internet and put them on the internet so that nobody knows how they get up there. It's some kind of private way so it can't be traced. So that's what we think happened, is that this person put the notes on the internet. Now, why is the estate of Edgar Mitchell important in looking at the chain of custody? Well, Eric Davis and Edgar Mitchell were colleagues and members of NIDS. What was NIDS? The NIDS is the National Institute for Discovery Science. It was a research organization based in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it was created by the real estate developer Robert Bigelow to scientifically study paranormal phenomena. It operated from 1995 to 2004. So we're hypothesizing that Eric Davis wrote his notes from his meeting with Admiral Wilson to share with his colleagues at NIDS, because here he is, he's on the staff of NIDS during this time period. Here's the president, Robert Bigelow's mentioned up here. And on the scientific advisory board at the same time is Edgar Mitchell. If you look down this list, you'll see some other names that you might recognize. Jacques Vallée is a big guy, and I won't go into that. Harold Pudoff's very important right now. So there's other people on the scientific advisory board at this time. So the hypothesis is Eric Davis spoke with Admiral Wilson to find out about these programs of reverse engineering because he's doing similar work. He's working on propulsion. He's working on similar type things, and they want to know what else is going on, who has what. And so Eric Davis writes his notes, and he probably shares them with a bunch of the people on his colleagues at NIDS, including Edgar Mitchell. And again, who's Edgar Mitchell? Well, he's a United States Apollo 14 astronaut and was the 6th person to walk on the moon. Upon his return trip back to Earth, he had a transformative experience of universal connectedness, a samadhi experience, which led him to establish the Institute of Noetic Sciences in 1973 to research consciousness. He also had an interest in UFOs because he grew up near Roswell, New Mexico, unbelievably. And so he heard from many local residents about their experience with the Roswell UFO crash. So he knew, he didn't see the crash, but he heard from these, we called old timers who were friends of the family, who he knew, they knew him. And he heard all these stories about the authenticity that there really was a crash in Roswell, New Mexico. So now he's on the scientific advisory board of Robert Bigelow's NIDS. And I have a great video here that I'm going to play where he confirms that he met with an admiral. He doesn't say Admiral Wilson, but wait till you hear about the whole story. It really echoes the information that were in the notes. Here's the video. You might want to adjust your sound. I'm not sure if this is going to be louder or softer than me speaking. Okay, here we go.
With another naval officer, Commander Will Miller from over in the Tampa area, and Dr. Stephen Greer. We were at a disclosure conference in Washington, D.C., and we got an appointment with the chief of the Intelligence Committee of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon. And we told them our respective stories. And the admiral that was in charge of the committee, there was about several officers there, I don't remember how many, half a dozen, besides ourselves, said, I don't know about that, but I will get back to you. And he didn't get back to me personally. He got back to Dr. Greer very shortly and said, what you told us is real. There was alien visitation. And Now, that same person has subsequently denied he said that. However, we have independent corroboration that he did go checking, found the location of the so-called special access programs, or one access, special access program, and was told, Admiral, you don't have need to know, therefore we can't talk to you. So that's the same fate that we know that Barry Goldwater suffered when he was running for president and tried to find out about special access, these special access programs. And Walter Webster Hubbell, Bill Clinton's emissary, whom he sent to find out about it, suffered the same fate. You can't know about this. And a few other people, Jimmy Carter, who mentioned before his election that he had had UFO experience, and that he was going to find out about it when he got in, if he got elected, but never a word about it thereafter.
Okay, so that's pretty interesting. So let's go back to the timeline now. So Edgar Mitchell meets with Admiral Wilson, with Stephen Greer, Willard Miller, and Admiral Wilson locates the program, but he's denied access. He tells Eric Davis this in 2002. He writes up his notes. Then he dies. James Rigby gets the notes, and then he gives them to Grant Cameron, and then the notes are placed on the internet. And right now, I'm going to talk about these July 2020, very recent New York Times articles, and the Department of Defense Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force that was just recently announced. And this is, again, more evidence to suggest that what's in these notes is actually accurate. So let's look at July 23rd and July 28th New York Times articles. Okay. So the first one, July 23rd, written by Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kane. Okay. So I edited this now. This is not the full article. I edited it to shorten it just a little bit. Despite Pentagon statements that it disbanded a once covert program to investigate unidentified flying objects, the effort remains underway, renamed the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force and tucked inside the Office of Naval Intelligence, where officials continue to study mystifying encounters between military pilots and unidentified aerial vehicles. A Senate committee report outlining spending on the nation's intelligence agencies for the coming year said the program, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, was to, quote, standardize a collection and reporting on sightings of unexplained aerial vehicles, and was to report at least some of its findings to the public within 180 days after passage of the Intelligence Authorization Act. In 2017, the New York Times disclosed the existence of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The program was begun in 2007 under the Defense Intelligence Agency and was then placed within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, which remains responsible for its oversight. But its coordination with the intelligence community will be carried out by the Office of Naval Intelligence as described in the Senate budget bill. The Pentagon's program previous director, Luis Elizondo, a former military intelligence official who resigned in October 2017 after 10 years with the program, is among a small group of former government officials and scientists with security clearances who, without presenting physical proof, say, and I bolded this, they are convinced that objects of undetermined origin have crashed on Earth with materials retrieved for study. Mr. Reid, the former Democratic senator from Nevada, who pushed for funding of the earlier UFO program when he was the majority leader, said he believed that crashes of objects of unknown origin may have occurred and that retrieved materials should be studied. Now, what I have in red here is the original article. After about a day, the New York Times edited their own article and changed the quote to what I just read. But the original piece reads like this. This is the original piece. Mr. Reid, the former Democratic senator from Nevada who pushed for funding the earlier UFO program when he was the majority leader, said he believed that crashes of vehicles from other worlds had occurred and that retrieved materials had been studied, secretly for decades, often by aerospace companies under government contracts. Okay, so after looking into this, I came to the conclusion that there were reports, some were substantive, some not so substantive, that they were actual materials that the government and the private sector had in their possession, Mr. Reed said in an interview. So now we're going to talk about Eric Davis, who is in the New York Times article. This is the writer of the notes. Eric W. Davis, an astrophysicist who worked as a subcontractor and then a consultant for the Pentagon's UFO program since 2007, said that in some cases, examination of the materials had so far failed to determine their source and led him to conclude we couldn't make it ourselves. Mr. Davis, who now works for Aerospace Corporation, a defense contractor, said he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency as recently as March about retrievals from off-world vehicles not made on this earth, which is almost perfectly the same thing as what the notes say, off-world vehicles not made on this earth. And then the ending of this New York Times article, Mr. Reed said more should be made public to clarify what is known and what is not. Quote, it is extremely important that information about the discovery of physical materials or retrieved craft come out, he said. And here is the Department of Defense on August 14th had a press release, and they're saying that there really is now the establishment of an unidentified aerial phenomena task force. And it's, you can see here that the Deputy Secretary of Defense, David L. Norquist, approved the establishment of this task force, and that it's going to be within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. And it's going to try to coordinate, because part of the problem has been that the study of these things has been so secret, they call it stovepipes, that only certain people know certain things and they don't share the information, and that makes the studying it all the harder. And so supposedly people are going to start sharing, and some of this information is going to be more public in the near future. You know, we'll see if that happens, but they're being very public that they're going to study unidentified aerial phenomena now. It's a public thing, and that's UFOs. Okay, now after this article came out, Senator Harry Reid put out a tweet sort of disavowing some of what the reporters said that he said. And so Harry Reid said, I have no knowledge and I have never suggested the federal government or any entity has unidentified flying objects or debris from other worlds. I've consistently said we must stick to science, not fairy tales about little green men. But one of the authors replied to that, Leslie Keene, and she said, we don't understand why Senator Reid tweeted this. We stand by the reporting we have in our story on him. There's no question. He feels a need to pull back from it. Why he's doing it, we don't know. And back in April, before this story came out, Harry Reid tweeted this. I'm glad the Pentagon is finally releasing this footage, but it only scratches the surface of research and materials available. The U.S. needs to take a serious scientific look at this and any potential national security implications. The American people deserve to be informed. And here is an interview by the great George Knapp talking to Harry Reid, where he's sort of saying what the author said he said. So I'll play this for you too. And again, note that your loudness or softness might have to be modified.
Well, has the U.S. government been hiding pieces from crashed UFOs? That's the question being asked because of a blockbuster story published in the New York Times.
The Times acknowledged what our I-team has reported for the past few years, namely that a secret Pentagon study looking into UFOs is still underway after all. But the newspaper story drew a rebuke from one of the sources it quoted, former Nevada Senator Harry Reid. George Knapp has this exclusive story.
You've said about you don't think it's little green men, and we had a lot of speculation about where these vehicles are from. They're far more advanced than anything known to us. Is it possible that there's no one who knows the ultimate answer? What the
I
truth
think
is?
now, and the reason I'm so terribly interested in this is I don't think No one has the answers.
Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has spoken with us about UFO issues more times than with any other media organization on and off the record. And in each of those exchanges, we've asked about the persistent stories of crashed saucers, recovered materials, dark secrets, the same rumors that started with the famous Roswell incident in 1947 and which resurfaced in 1989 with our news reports about alleged alien technology stashed in the Nevada desert near Area 51s.
I am interested in science.
In previous statements, Reid has stressed that UFOs do not equate to aliens. His primary concern has been national security, specifically whether Russia or China might be ahead of us in mastering advanced technology. In 2009, Reid tried to create a special access program intended to interact with other secret programs that may or may not have additional evidence or materials related to the UFO mystery.
One reason I did that is there's always this rumor, some people say that there are some public corporations that have materials that we should look at. Now, I wanted to make sure that that was valid or not valid, but I couldn't get, they wouldn't, Defense Department wouldn't approve it.
What do you think of that? Do you think somebody's got pieces or a craft, or did you, and you ever?
But I don't know, George. I don't know why they wouldn't want to put this to sleep. Unless there's something to it I don't understand, but that's what.
Okay, so he tried to look into it too, and he couldn't get to the bottom of it either. So then the very last New York Times article, real quick, just again, more supporting evidence on July of 28. This is from the New York Times. They say, in our reporting, we focused on how the Department of Defense, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and members of 2 Senate committees are engaged with this topic. Current officials are now concerned about the potential threat represented by the very real advanced technological objects, how close they can come to our fighter jets, sometimes causing a near miss, and the risk that our adversaries may acquire the technology demonstrated by the objects before we do. Numerous associates of the Pentagon program with high security clearances and decades of involvement with official UFO investigations told us they were convinced such crashes have occurred based on their access to classified information, but the retrieved materials themselves and any data about them are completely off limits to anyone without clearances and a need to know. So that's, to me, a lot of evidence that there really are these programs, that there really is crashed material or just materials. There might even be actual craft. I didn't even talk about the whole Bob Lazar piece of the evidence where he said he actually worked on craft. So there's other information out there that if you're wanting to look into it, there's a lot of information out there that could really make you say, I think something looks like it's going on. And here's the thing, remember when I first started, I said, in the year 2000, it was an awakening. It was an awakening for me personally on the reality that there's something going on here that we don't understand. And now it's growing and growing. So I think there's an awakening of our culture and opening up. And scientists are getting on board more and more. We're looking at the nature of reality. We're questioning, do we have it right, or is there something we don't even understand? I think there's something we don't even understand. And we've got to start asking the questions. And if you take this field of ufology, it's a great entryway into, there's something else going on. We've got to take a look at this and think about it in a way different way. It's an awakening. It's an opening up. So thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. That was really eye-opening. I have not taken a look at those notes since they've come out. But now after your presentation and me being so into UFOs for last 40 years, these notes really vindicate what you were saying about the whole Bob Lazar Area 51 S4 reverse engineering program that he was a part of, that he stuck to his guns for the last 31 years. And this basically kind of just vindicates him. you know, in my mind, and I think a lot of other folks' minds as well, that he has been telling the truth for a very, very long time.
Yes. There's a great film out there, Ariello, called by Corbell, and it's Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. And it's a great film, you know, if you're into Bob Lazar, it really supports him.
That's on Netflix, I believe.
Jeremy Corbell's film, yes.
Yeah. I have a question from James. It is a fact that the government and its programs companies have UFO materials crashed and otherwise obtained. So far, the successfulness of the reverse engineering has been limited. Why would they keep it a secret anymore? Wouldn't we expect them to reverse engineer it? Do you have an answer for that? Because I may be able to answer that as well.
Well, I think that's what's happening. It is coming out. I think that's what the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science and those guys are trying to do. I think we're at a point where we do want to bring out the technology. And in order to bring out the technology, we've got to admit how we got it. And we want to make advances in our studying of, you know, gravity propulsion, you know, different kind of propulsion systems, including anti-gravity. We're on the cusp of making some advancements there. I think that's why this is, the timing is good for this information to come out, because they actually want to make scientific advances right now, and they're going to need to fess up a little bit. I think that might be part of it.
I think you're right, because according to Bob Lazar, one of the drawbacks of the program when he was a part of it at S4 was it was a military operation, and it was very compartmentalized. So you couldn't talk to someone at, so he was, I think he was part of, I forgot which project he was in. There were 3 different projects there, and they couldn't talk amongst themselves with other folks in the different projects. So they hit an impasse. So there's only so far that our science can go with trying to reverse engineer these off-world materials. So what they're trying to do, I think they're trying to condition us to accept this. And I think that's part of what To the Stars Academy is about. They're just ready, you know, they're getting us ready. It's like they're giving us little nuggets, little appetizers until the day that they finally disclose everything. And I think the U.S. government is closer than ever before in the last 50 years, 60 years since the crash at Roswell.
Yes.
And we have one more quick question before we switch it over to Paul and Benino. Kathleen, do you think that the disclosure will happen soon? Our government or some other government admitting that UFOs are real or aliens are among us? That's from Lauren.
I think I'm hopeful. Now, I know other people say, oh, they've been hopeful before and their hopes were dashed, but I'm hopeful. One of the reasons is on Father's Day, President Trump's son, Don Jr., asked him to, the only thing he really wants to know is about the UFO. I think he said JFK too, but he wants to know, are aliens real? And the father said he would take a look at it. Lou, what's his last name? A guy on Fox News, Lou somebody, Lou, I can't remember his last name, but he's on Fox Business. He asked the president about it. And then Maria Bartiromola, I can't pronounce her last name on Fox, she asked the president about it. And he keeps saying he's taking a look into it. I mean, if anybody was going to say anything and be transparent about it, I think he would. And so I'm hopeful about that. And the other quick thing I want to say, the other reason I'm hopeful is, as I told you, I have many different interests. And one of the other things I'm into is human evolution and the expansion of our consciousness. And I do believe that humanity as a whole right now is in a time period of evolutionary growth, evolutionary leap, and expansion of all of humanity's consciousness. And because of that, I'm hopeful that this piece will be revealed as part of all of humanity's growth and evolution.
I believe so too. And I believe also that the president probably, he says that, but he doesn't have access. He's a transitory figure, kind of like the same way with Clinton and President Jimmy Carter. they couldn't get access to that unless you're, say, like, George Bush Sr., who was director of the CIA, then you would know. But I think they made it a point of this program, these unacknowledged programs, that they are hidden from prominent politicians, including the presidency.
That's right. That's what Harry Reid was saying. That's exactly what Harry Reid was saying.
Okay. One quick one from Carl. Do you think other countries may have knowledge of UFOs that might release publicly?
They actually have. I think France, maybe
uh-huh.
Brazil, Japan just created its own UFO study group very recently. And there has been other countries that have, the UK released some of its documentation. So there have been other countries already that have released some information. And again, I only know this from the History Channel's Unidentified, I think it is, where the To the Stars Academy guys, Luis Elizondo's going around, and he's talking to other countries, and he's trying to get, the information from the other countries out to the American public as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, does just take a minute or two to transition from Kathleen